Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We've got our library director in the house, Ashley Teagle. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So you've been here about 9 months. We wanted to let you get your feet wet before we came in and asked you hard questions about the library, but you're head of one of our favorite institutions in town. Everyone loves the library. And I know from being an editor, being in charge of an institution is a lot of pressure.
Yes.
How's it going?
So far, so good. I think we're really making progress. We have been very fortunate since I've started. Around the same time, we had some key new staff come on board, including a grant writer that's been really successful, helping us get some funding to support our programs and services. We have a new communications manager, and I think he's really helped us get the message out about what the library has to offer.
Yeah.
So I think we're gaining traction with the community, either rediscovering us or remembering that, we're even there in the first place and what we can offer.
Right. Now, the library is located downtown.
Yes.
And, I work downtown and I see all the time, that's a busy place.
Yes, it is. And I think this summer we were a little busier than previous years. We do try to track our attendance. Just to put it in perspective, we did a summer reading kickoff event at the mall because we also have the center branch located inside of the mall. We had over 800 people come through that day to participate in activities. Yeah. So it's been a great summer for us.
It's so great that the library is a focus of downtown. I remember being one of those people who thought maybe moving it out of downtown was the solution. I'm so glad I was wrong about that because downtown needs the library.
I think so. Personally, I really like the location. I know that we've had some concerns about changes that are going to come up in the city downtown where we might lose some parking lots, but my understanding is that's going to be a process. I'm sure they'll notify the public as those changes come up. But I really love the fact that we are pretty central in that downtown location to so many people. I also feel like for some of our residents, we're walkable. So we do see an uptick in like our teens coming in and using the space as well.
Yeah. And it's a great facility. It needs to be bigger though. I guess you hear this all the time.
Yes. So the rule of thumb is you should have 1 square foot of library space per capita. Most library systems, unfortunately, aren't reaching that goal. We know that our counties have competing priorities.
So that would be about 100,000 square feet in our county.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. So, it's a progression. And so right now I'm really had a lot of attention focused on Pittsville just because currently that's actually in a trailer. It's pretty much a temporary library facility. So I've been having discussion with our county executive about hopefully moving forward, replacing that location.
Yeah, let's talk about Pittsville since we're there.
Sure.
It came up in the budget discussions. In fact, someone was just at county council a couple weeks ago, and they complained, or not complained, but they were articulating the need for a better facility in Pittsville. I know your predecessor had this ambitious idea for a $4 million library out there, and I was like, Andrea, they're never going to build that thing. But she's like, yes, no, we're going to build it. Where does that stand now, and what is sort of is there any compromise on that, or where's that headed?
So the county executive is open. His initial discussion with me has been maybe we look at an existing building that perhaps we can retrofit to be a library as a solution that makes us move this process along a little faster. They've currently been in the trailer about 15 years, which is a really long time. And I do feel the community has demonstrated the need and the usage. Currently they have 6 parking spaces, so it's like even with the library there, they're very limited in how many people they can serve because there's literally nowhere for people to park.
And when you go by there, it's always busy in there.
Yes. It is used, the staff is wonderful because right now being on the grounds of the Pittsville Elementary and Middle School, they really try to engage the kids. So like if you look at their events calendar, they're always trying to engage kids with STEM activities. They try to plan events specifically after school to draw the kids in and give them something to do.
Right. And that's important too. In my job, I'm more mobile now, so I'll take my laptop and I'll work from lots of different places. So I've gotten to know all the different local libraries really well.
Yes.
And I love the Ocean Pines Library. There's such a community spirit out there. It's just a great functional environment. I used to go to the little library in Berlin all the time. I like that. Now they've built the bigger library in
Yes.
Berlin, and I was like, they don't need a bigger library, but it's beautiful and it's so nice, and it gets so much more use than the old little library
Yes.
did. Just a really positive feeling in there. And it's way beyond just a place where books are stored. It's really a community center.
Yes, and I think that's a big part of what I'm trying to get out to the community. The public library is really a neutral space. And it's interesting, I actually just had a phone call with a customer yesterday that expressed concern about a religious group using the library. And, I had to explain, my profession is governed by the First Amendment principles. We are trying to provide access to anybody. So really, we do have groups that rely on us for meeting room space. Again, we've got the kids, they come in, that's their social time. They come in and play games with each other from the library. The parents that come in with children for story time. So I do think libraries are a significant glue for a community as far as building that sense of community, because you never know who you're going to meet when you come in.
Right. And I'll have people say to me, like, where can we meet? Where's a
Yes.
good place we can have a gathering? And I'm like, the library is all I can think of. I mean,
Yes.
it's really important to have that.
It is, absolutely. And also because we try to be very fair, our board actually just last night approved our meeting room policy, which we tried to revamp to not only include nonprofit groups being able to use our space for free, but also what we're considering our community groups, because we recognize there's a lot of organizations that are working for the good of the community that maybe they can't afford, the fees at some traditional meeting venues. But if we can open up our space to make it more accessible to everyone, then I think, again, that builds a better community.
The library's been so important in my life because I went to St. Francis when I was a kid. My mom worked downtown. I'd leave St. Francis. I'd walk to the library, do my homework, and then I'd ride home with her at
Yep.
5 o'clock. So I was in the library every day, got to know all the librarians, got to know the whole process. And it really was a great environment with great people who really mentored and nurtured me.
Yes.
It was just so positive. And I just wish everyone could have that same kind of experience.
Yes, and honestly, I still think we get some of that. It was funny, one day I had to have our children's librarian attend a meeting, and she had a story time scheduled, and I was like, look, I really need you to go to this thing. Can you ask someone else to fill in for you? And someone actually wrote me a comment card and was like, hey, we love when Miss Barb is here doing story time.
Right.
Don't pull her off. So
Right.
I still think there is a sense of that when you come in the public library. Like, people say, this is my librarian, this is my library.
Yeah.
And they tend to be a little possessive that way. Like, there is that relationship building that happens.
Yeah, Mrs. White actually was the librarian in the kids' library who I first globbed onto. And then when I got to be about 12 or 13, she's like, well, you can go upstairs now. You don't have to be down here anymore. But so I was sitting among a bunch of 5 and 6-year-olds, doing my homework. But that's
Yep.
where I was comfortable.
Yes. And I think that's so true. And it's funny, when I took this position, I explained to the staff there, I was like, this is literally my library. And I was able to tell them about the library card that I had as a kid. Because
Right.
the same thing, I would walk downtown, go to the library, get my books, go home and read for hours. So I think it's just such a vital resource for everyone.
Now let's talk about that. You were from here.
Yes.
You managed to break out of jail, and then you broke back into jail. You're back with us, which is one of those great local success stories
Yes.
that we all love. So tell us about your journey from Salisbury. You were in Charles County. You're back here.
Yeah, so I was in Southern Maryland for 10 years. That is a really popular place for Eastern Shore folks to kind of gravitate. We're, 30 minutes outside of DC. You're accessible to Northern Virginia. And of course, there's a ton of high paying employers concentrated in those areas. So when I left Salisbury, it was with the goal of trying to break out and make it, so to speak. My first job that I had here in Salisbury was pretty low paying, not terrible for a brand new graduate,
Right.
but, I was kind of like, what else is out there? So when I transitioned to the Southern Maryland area, they have a fantastic library system in Charles County. I can't speak enough about them, and I'm hoping that some of the things that I learned about what a library can offer, that hopefully we can bring here to Salisbury as well. Because again, some of the things I thought they did well was innovation with programs and technology. That library system that I left, they used what they call self-checkout technology. So instead of having your librarians have to check out things for you, the kids especially love this concept of, I'm going to stack all my books on a pile, the RFID tags get turned off, I get my receipt, I go. And it just was a great model that worked fantastic in that area. Another thing that my specific branch was able to do was basically to develop a business center. And that's something that here in Salisbury, I would like to see us do more, supporting the small business community in whatever fashion that might look like. So I think there's a big benefit of being someone that's from an area. You leave, get exposure to other options, and then hopefully can either bring some of those ideas back home or, implement brand new ideas.
And your Charles County experience, I think, is really helpful here because that was a very rural county.
Yes.
Suddenly grows like crazy,
Yes.
huge population, with all those expanding needs and all the different cultural collisions and everything going on. And we're facing the same thing here.
I was going to say, yes, that was very shocking to me. Some of the similarities that I've seen is, trying to address our non-English speaking community. So currently we are very limited. We don't have anyone, for example, on staff that speaks Haitian Creole. I think that's something that longer term the library is going to have to think about, is how do we either recruit more librarians that can kind of help us meet the needs of all of our residents, or maybe developing some sort of volunteer program where they can perhaps help us translate and communicate better with all of our residents. That's certainly been something that's been on my mind. And I was blown away to find out that, I leave home for 10 years and all of a sudden Salisbury's, minority majority.
Right, exactly.
So I think that there's a lot of work to be done, just reaching out to various groups and identifying what they need. I do know that we do currently have some resources, print materials in various languages for some of our customers, but I also have questions about, are there other services that maybe the library could help with?
Unlike newspapers, which have not made a very good transition into the online, the digital world, libraries really seem to have gotten it early and, experimented with video and brought in the internet. It's like the internet hub for a lot of people who don't have internet, which is a big problem here locally. Why would you go into something that might be like a dinosaur kind of occupation and help lead the new way? I mean, I was always either 10 years too late or 10 years too early. I'm stuck in that transition. I would rather everything have been sorted out, at my age. But you were a young person who went into libraries.
Yes, and I think it's because they're not what people remember. I think that's the best way I can explain. I feel like a lot of times when I get feedback about what a library does, it's based on, 30 years ago when I was a kid or, when I was in college, but it's not been necessarily a recent experience. I think my message to the community is you should really come back and check out the library and be surprised at what we can offer. Just some examples, again, back to our fantastic grant writer, we've received a grant to offer hotspots. So we're hoping to start lending those to the public starting October 1st, speaking to the accessibility issue that we are aware of in the area. In September, we're planning to launch passport acceptance service at the center branch. So people can actually apply to get a passport, renew a passport, get their passport photo taken from the public library.
See, now that would just be too helpful. It's
I know.
It's more fun to go down to the post office and sit there for 6 hours.
Right, and just wait and wait and wait. So I think, I'm looking at the library as a resource that our other big benefit is that we're open year round and we do offer extended hours. And so I'm trying to work with the staff to figure out what are the needs of the community and how can we leverage the fact that we have these facilities that are easy to access, that we're open in the evenings, we're open on weekends. What are the things that people need from us? And then meeting that need. And I think, again, when we are able to engage customers, they're really surprised. Like we have the Overdrive app. We now offer free magazine checkouts. I'm like, in the
It's
age
amazing.
of Amazon, it's like people don't make that connection that, wait, my library has that for free. So I'm really excited about the direction that we're going. And I think technology literacy is a big piece of what we're doing now. I mean, we always have our readers. Don't get me wrong. We were not going to stop buying print books. And as a reader myself, you're always going to see them in there. But, there is a huge divide in communities where, like you were saying, if people don't have the resources to have a computer at home, they can't afford to have that internet access at home, we are that connecting point. And so I'm finding the downtown branch is almost becoming like this one-stop shop. We have homework help service so kids can get tutoring to help make sure that they're on track in school. For adults, we've got the adult literacy program, Project Read. So at a basic level, it's like if we can help people get up to speed with their reading. Warwick is offering their GED classes out of our building as well.
Yes, and that's an excellent thing, yes.
Yes, and so I'm like, think about the power of that someone could come to the library, learn to read, go across the hall, get their GED, then we can send them upstairs to our job search center, and then they're able to actually have someone work with them one-on-one, developing that resume, helping them complete that online application. And we've had success stories with that, where people have really been able to leverage everything that we have to offer to improve their lives.
That's interesting because you talk about literacy being an issue, and it really is an issue. And I used to think, well, it's not, that's all made up stuff. It's impossible for anyone to not be able to read.
Yes.
But when I was a publisher guy, we were trying to grow circulation of our paper on the Eastern Shore of Virginia. And between the immigrant population, the migrant population, and the illiteracy, it was like 22% of the people in there they were functionally illiterate, so they weren't going to read a newspaper.
Right.
But we had to do the research to figure that out, and I was stunned by that number.
Yes, and it's very interesting. So Lynette Curtis, who's our project read coordinator, is a fantastic asset to our library system. One, because her program is very unique. I know that if you Google Project Read, you'll see that other libraries have varying types of adult literacy, adult tutoring type programs. But what's really unique about her program is that she's very specific and individualized. So her background is in, being a reading specialist. She's currently going through SU's PhD program in literacy.
Wow.
And she really has a heart for what she does. And so by her screening she calls them her learners, the folks that come in, it's a confidential program. So it's surprising, like when I've talked to her to learn more about the program, she tells me, someone has applied for a job. Their employer thinks they're a good candidate, but they have concerns about their reading level. So then maybe she gets a referral from that employer, like, hey, can you work with this person because I want to hire them, but their reading isn't quite where I need it to be for them to be successful in the position.
Right.
And of course, adults with disabilities. She's had success stories of folks coming through her program, identifying what it is that they want to learn, and then being able to move out of like those group living settings into an independent living setting. I mean, that is tremendous.
That's
and
amazing.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think you're right. There's such a stigma behind, I don't know how to read, and I'm this adult. And it's not just people, again, with disabilities, it's everyone. I mean, it's amazing how many people can slip through the cracks, and they, maybe have kind of faked it until they've made it in life,
Right.
Okay, this red sign is stop, but you want to help people really get to a point of being able to comprehend and be able to function in the world, because so much is written. I mean, even with the internet, everything is still written down.
Yeah, it's amazing. Library was a big part of my life young. Then I never went to the library anymore. I went in college to study. And then I had kids, and suddenly you're at the library every weekend with
Yes.
the kids. And then they get a certain age and you don't go to the library anymore. And I'd sort of forgotten about how important the library was. And then the recession hit in
Yes.
2008 or 9. And at the budget table, they cut the library hours on Sunday. And I was like, well, that makes this low-hanging fruit. That's an easy cut. My phone melted the next week. People were so outraged that they had cut the library hours on the weekends.
Yes.
And in fact, when Rick Pollitt, our county executive, was able to restore those hours, he made a big deal about it because he was getting the same kind of feedback. But people love the library even on the weekend. They were using it all the
Yes.
time.
I mean, again, it goes back to the idea it's a space,
Yeah.
I mean, we really encourage people to come and hang out with us, and that's okay. I came to this library system and hearing staff tell stories. We have customers, of course, experiencing homelessness that come to the library. It really is a refuge for a lot of people. But just hearing how personal and connected the staff can get to certain customers is
Yeah.
amazing to me. And I think in a world where, we're so social media heavy, we can be a little low on human interaction at times. The library is really, one of the last places that people are congregating across income levels, across backgrounds, and really, again, defining what that community experience looks like.
Yeah, I was at a Rotary thing sitting next to somebody, and they were like, I don't understand. Libraries are for books, and, you see all these people, these poor people in there to use the internet. And I'm like, wait a minute. You want them to have jobs.
Yes.
If you go in there and you watch these people, they're sitting there meeting with career counselor people who are helping them do a resume. You can't apply for a job now by mailing your resume somewhere.
Right.
It's all done online. And if you don't
Exactly.
have the computer or the laptop or whatever, you can't do it, and you have to go to the library. I salute these people for making the initiative to go to the library, to sit down with someone and say, help me get my credentials out so I can get
Yeah.
a job. I mean, people are really trying, and they're using the library for that.
Yes, and I would also say along those lines, the library almost has become this, I don't even want to say social services, maybe it's more social justice.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
again, we're an equalizer. And so the downtown library is planning to pilot doing an after school feeding program. Because, again, you look at the customers that come in, and sometimes people want to stereotype. Oh my gosh, the teens are obnoxious. They're
Right.
loud. They're chaotic. Well, we're experimenting because we don't know everyone's background. And could it be that sometimes the kids come in and act out because maybe home life isn't so great? Maybe they aren't eating. And so it's kind of looking at the library as a space that really takes care of the whole person. So even with programs and services that we offer, just trying to make sure that they're educational, that we're working with community partners so people know that there's help out there. I think the world today, we've gotten away from being helpful all the time. And I think that is another great thing about the library. It's like if you ask a question, I might not know the answer right away, but I'm going to do my best to find out. And hopefully that discussion leads to me finding out that, oh, well, there's this other nonprofit that can help you with this question or concern that you have. And so, again, I just really credit the library so much. I don't think people understand that if we just took the library out of downtown, if we took away the library in Pittsville, even if we took the library out of the mall, I think it would make a tremendous impact on communities. I mean, tutors rely on us to meet with their students. Students rely on us because another thing we've seen a big uptick in is that people will own their own devices. Everybody has a smartphone. A lot of people have tablets. And so sometimes if you drive past one of like the library downtown and you see people kind of hanging out on their phones, it's because we don't turn off our Wi-Fi.
Right.
And for some people that is the lifeline. So it's like at least you can check your email, you might be able to make a phone call over Wi-Fi. So the library really has become this thread for a lot of people. And again, I never try to limit us to just one demographic. It's like we really offer something for everyone. I came in and I'm just like, hey, I'm new. I want the library to be a resource that you can be proud of for the county. And so if there are ways that we can be helpful to your administration, then let me know. And I think that has really opened up a conversation. So do I feel like we're going to get all new libraries everywhere overnight?
Right.
No.
Right.
But I do think, again, the county executive actually came out and visited our Pittsville branch. And I really would like to think that him and I being able to have more productive one-on-one conversations maybe help with that, where he could kind of see in person what the library has to offer.
Right.
And then after he visited Pittsville, he did come and speak to me personally about the Pittsville Library. And then he toured downtown and then got to see, we had a summer reading program going on. So there were a ton of kids in the building. He saw people taking advantage of the computers. He was able to see some of the physical resources that we offer. And so I think for me, I've been really focused on let's break down the barrier and determine what's our common ground, because I think he wants a successful county. I want a successful county. And even if how we both go about that looks a little different, I still think that there's an opportunity for some common ground.
And it's a jewel.
It is.
In order to be a successful community, you need an airport, you need a
Yes.
hospital, you need a good rec program, you need a library system.
Yes. Yes. And I really advocate, I think when the community talks about education and thinks about education, I'm very passionate about saying your public library is that third leg to your educational system. So I think Wicomico is very fortunate. Charles County only had their community college. And I don't want to say only because they were very impactful. But, we're fortunate because we not only have the community college in Warwick, but we've got Salisbury University. And then we have, a very active public school system, and we've got the community joining forces behind the schools with the Education Foundation. But now I'm trying to shed a little more light on the library because I feel like people don't always connect the dots that, we are where people go. It's like once you're done elementary, middle, high school, you get through college, your lifelong learning experiences are going to happen at your public libraries.
When I get a good book, I'm completely lost in the book. A book is like a friend that I can pull off the shelf and it'll talk to me.
Yes.
And for me, it's like a sacred thing. And my kids read, but they don't read like I used to read. And it frustrates me. I mean, I used to really anticipate the next book coming out by a favorite author and running out and buying it and all that. What do you see in terms of, well, let's talk about you. Are you that way, or how do you feel about books still?
I love books. And working in a public library, I'm like this unstoppable monster now because it's like every day I'm running upstairs and I'm like, let me just check out something. Even if I know I don't actually have time to read it, I'll just return it and then check it out again later. But now that we
See,
have,
if I'm the library director, I'm not checking anything out. I'm just taking whatever I want, whenever I want. But go ahead.
I'm checking it all out. I want to get all the circulations. But now that we have the print collection in addition to these online resources, so I don't know how many people are aware, back to the fact that we have digital magazines. We also have digital audiobooks. We have ebooks that you can borrow at no cost from the library. I'm like, turn off the Audible subscription. You can just come to us.
Right.
And so for myself, I've become like this book monster, especially since I've become a librarian, because I wasn't aware until shortly before I started working in libraries that we even offered digital ebooks. And they're great. It's like if you're a commuter and you know are driving an hour to work each day.
Yeah.
It's like you're not probably going to come home and read for a couple more hours, but you may listen to a great story. And so I think the public library has been really responsive to that as well, that maybe people can't rely on us for print all the time, but they hopefully will think of us when it's time for vacation and they want that book to take. But the convenience of having those digital resources is tremendous to people. I know living in Southern Maryland, that was when I really reconnected with the library, because I'm like, oh man, I'm driving to DC every day. They play the same 10 songs on the radio.
Right.
I need something else going on. So the library's audiobook collection is fantastic. And that's become its own world if you're not aware. It's like they offer
Yes.
awards now for like the best narrators and actors. And there really are like these audio productions. And so I think that's just another way that we can reach people. I also recommend audiobooks for reluctant readers. Back to you saying like, kids today don't read. I mean, for a teenager, I would hands down say your summer reading list has come out. You need to read this. Well, maybe give it a listen, because I think people comprehend information differently. And so for those auditory learners, maybe that book sinks in a little better that way. And to me, I don't care if you check it out in print, if you're borrowing the ebook, if you're borrowing it digitally as an audiobook, but just read and inform yourself.
What can we in the public do to help you do your job and make the library better?
I would love to see the community really, one, put your money where your mouth is just a little bit.
Right.
We have a friends group, and they are wonderful. I don't know if people recognize how much this volunteer friends group does for the library, but if you come downtown, they run the bookstore. All the sales from the bookstore go back to the library.
Right there in the front when you come in.
Yes, right there in the
excellent,
lobby.
Yeah.
And they have a great selection. I'm
Yeah.
always in there like, hey, I just read that. Hey, I just read that. So they get some pretty good stuff. But the other thing is actually getting a membership and joining the Friends. And that's because the Friends, in addition to being a fundraising body for the library, they're also an advocacy group. And I think it's important that the community understands that you have to engage. So if I don't hear from the community, if your elected officials don't hear from the community, even going to, the county council meetings and just making a remark, showing up when it's budget time just to express support, I think is really important. And I think, again, our county executive has been receptive to that. There's nothing wrong with people exercising those democratic rights. And I think part of the problem for the library is that we've been, like you said, a hidden gem. It's like people know about the schools, SUs all over the place, but just at a very basic level saying, you know what, I really am a friend of the library. I support the cause. I'll pay, the $20 membership to say that I'm all in. I'm a library supporter.
She's Ashley Teagle. She's the executive director of our Wicomico County Library System, and we're thrilled that she had time to be with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.